All right, let's get this show on the road. Hello, everyone. Hope you're well. I'm kidding with the mask. I'm kidding with the mask. Okay. But yes, we are having class online just so we're safe. Hi, this is me. At the moment, you don't have to turn on your video if you don't want to. It's completely okay. But at some point, I would like to see you guys in person. I don't know how or when that is going to work out. So I think that was a part of the cause for confusion, because when they asked me how I wanted to teach the class, I chose the hybrid option. And so they assigned me a classroom and everything. And so there were some people who weren't sure, do we meet in person? Do we not? I don't know. So it's kind of like, I wanted the class to mostly be online, but I wanted the option for later in the semester, if somehow things aren't so crazy, we could meet up at some point during one of our synchronous meetings, and I can get to see you all, and we can, I don't know, meet outside somewhere. But we'll see how things go. We'll play it by ear. But the majority of this class is going to be online, if not all of it. So my name is Jhevon Smith. I will be your instructor for this class. This is Math 1203. It's Applied Calculus 1, Fall 2020. So what we're going to do for the first class is I'm pretty much going to tell you guys the rules, how it's going to work. I'm going to give you guys a syllabus. I'm going to let you guys know what textbook, all that good stuff. If you don't have anything prepared at this point, it's okay. So we'll get into that, and we will get into what I expect you to have under control at this point, which is pretty much just algebra skills, actually. So if you have your algebra skills, you're fine. If you don't have a textbook or anything else, don't worry about it. It's going to be great. So our class is once a week for 3 hours. And I'm going to talk about how we're going to get through those 3 hours. I don't think it's going to be even a little bit less traditional, but it's going to be using a mode of teaching that I used already. And surprisingly, even though this whole move to online thing happened recently, I actually have a lot of experience. So it's still sort of weird meeting people like this, but if it seems like I'm comfortable, it's because I've had a lot of experience. I was teaching 7 classes in the spring when everything happened. So I taught half the semester of like 7 classes online, and you guys are going to see what happened, how it all worked out. We'll get to that later. And then I taught 3 classes in the summer online. So it's still kind of weird to me, but I'm more or less kind of comfortable with this scenario of me talking to a bunch of faceless people. Because normally I share my screen, so you guys having your video on doesn't really make sense. That being said, I do encourage you guys to participate whenever we're meeting like this synchronously. I do want you to type in the comments. You can type so everyone can see it. You can audibly say something as well. So if you participate, the more you can make this feel like an in-person class, the better, I think. And we'll talk about that as well. Some of the differences, some of the nuances to taking a class online versus in person that I've been noticing. Okay, so without further ado, let's get into it. Let me share my screen. So hopefully you guys can all see that. Is everyone actually seeing that?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Thank you for that audible yes. Now, normally when I'm in this mode, I am going to turn off my video because I think it works better technologically that way. It's kind of slows things down to share my screen and have the bandwidth to project video at the same time. So now we're all going to be faceless, but you've seen my face. Hi, this is me. Okay, so let me stop the video at this point, and we're going to discuss the class. Okay, there we go. Now, this is sort of new, and you guys will see, because I just recently got the full version of Office, so this version of Microsoft OneNote I'm not familiar with, so you might see me stumble around this a little bit today. But overall, it should be fine. We're not doing anything crazy today. So this is the syllabus. I'll show you how to access it. And what we're pretty much going to do for now is we're going to just talk about the class, how it's going to be run, what are all the rules, and just get everyone kind of on the same page with what we will be doing, what I will expect from you, etc. Okay, so let's begin. Let's run through it. This is Applied Calculus 1, it's Math 1203. Those are our class times. Chances are if you're meeting with me in Zoom synchronously like this, we are not going to be spending that entire time together. Because even in person, I have taught 3-hour classes in person before, and trust me, even in person, after an hour and a half, everyone's eyes start glazing over, and we pretty much try to survive the last half of the class. I don't think that's going to be as productive in this context. So we'll talk about how the class is going to be run, how you're going to consume lecture material as we move on. But let's just start with the introductions. My name is Jhevon Smith. You can call me Jhevon, that's fine. That is my email. You should have received an email, a mass email from that email address. So that's the first order of business. I want to make sure what messages you guys have actually received. So is there anyone who did not receive an email from this email address yesterday?
I got it.
Everyone got it. Is there anyone who did not get it? This is, that's what I mostly want to figure out. Okay, so everyone got an email from me directly. Okay, there is a second place that I sent out messages. It was through something called Jupyter Grades or Jupyter Ed or something like that. Is there anyone who did not get that one? Jupyter Ed, does that not sound familiar? Okay, so apparently everyone got that one. Okay, so there was another message sent out. Like I sent out a bunch of messages. So I just want to make sure which ones have landed and which ones have not. There was another one sent out through something called Gradescope. Did everyone receive that one? Gradescope, one word. So that's like Gradescope. That word. Okay, so it seems everyone got that. Did everyone receive the message from Blackboard? So I also posted an announcement on Blackboard because I know we're not meeting in person. So I sent out a bunch of messages through a bunch of different avenues to make sure that everyone would, the hope is that everyone would see at least one of these. And so I can make sure that we're incommunicado. Okay.
I didn't
Awesome.
see it on Blackboard.
You did not see it on Blackboard.
No.
Can you log into your Blackboard?
Yeah, I'm doing that right now.
So make sure you can log into your Blackboard and you will see the announcements. So I believe that Blackboard automatically sends out a mass email once I post an announcement. I may be wrong about that, but I believe it would send out an email. So I posted an announcement in Blackboard. Okay, now moving forward, just so you guys know, I will mostly be communicating with you through the Jupyter Ed avenue. So if you didn't get the message from Jupyter Ed, that's the biggest red flag. Okay, so most of the time I'll be communicating through there. And I'll talk about what that is. I'll talk about all these things that I'm mentioning, what they are moving forward as well. But that's the most one. I don't particularly like using Blackboard. So I posted there, like I said, just as a backup or just in case. I'm not going to be using Blackboard a lot, if at all. I'll probably use it in the first week or week and a half just to make sure that I'm getting everybody. Pretty much everyone's here. I think there are only like 3 people missing. So I think you guys are getting some of my messages. This thing that you're seeing right now, this Zoom call is being recorded. I will make the video available to you. I will also make a PDF printout of whatever I do in OneNote available to you. So that is okay. I do recommend, though, in general, that you do still take notes. It's a way of staying engaged, and we'll talk about that moving on. Okay, so those are the preliminaries. Everyone was getting my messages. Something else I do want to mention, whenever you register for the class that we will be having on Zoom, I'll mention when those will happen. Please use your full name. Zoom bombing is a thing, and I just want to make sure that I'm actually letting in people who should actually be in the class. So type in your full name when you're registering so I can know that you should be here. Okay, all right. Very long introduction. That is what it's like to be on an online class. Communication is going to be very important. So I do want to make sure that you guys are receiving all versions of communications. Okay, all right. So again, this is the class Applied Calculus 1. There are about 3 versions of Calculus 1 at this college. So I do want to make sure that you're in the correct version of Calculus 1. Generally, the people who are here are in the life sciences, maybe in economics, it could work as well. Those are generally. If you're a math major or physics major, I would recommend you take a course like 1206. That's going to be more proof-based, more explanations. In this class, it's not going to be a lot of proofs, and I'm not really going to show you exactly where all the things come from that I talk about. We're pretty much I'm just going to tell you the facts. Here's what these things are. Here's how we're going to use them. This is the idea that we're taking advantage of, etc. Okay, so there are several versions of Calculus 1. Make sure that this is the correct version for your major, and your major advisor would probably be the best person to talk to. If you already talked to an advisor, then you should be fine. If, on the other hand, you researched this class and registered by yourself, I would definitely double check that you are supposed to be in this class, because there are several versions of Calculus 1. Okay. Office hours by appointment. I'm pretty open this semester. As long as I'm not teaching a class or proctoring something, I'll be available. So if you ever need to contact me for office hours, reach out to me at this email and say, hey, Jhevon, are you around? Can we set up a meeting? Generally, right after class, right after I end this Zoom call is a good time to speak with me, because I'll be available for a few after class. But if not, just shoot me an email if you can meet at some other time, and chances are I will be able to swing it. Mondays and Thursdays are my busiest days. So chances are I won't be able to meet with you Mondays or Thursdays. But Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Fridays, I'm generally pretty open, and you can get in contact with me. Office hours will also be through Zoom. So when you email me saying, hey, Jhevon, I want to meet up with you through office hours, and we decide on a time, I'll send you a Zoom link to office hours. And again, in general, I'm not going to make Zoom links publicly available because, again, Zoom bombing, you have people who just like to log into other people's Zoom meetings and cause trouble. So I'd rather keep those links private. Yeah, so this is my website. At that website, this is the one that's going to be more important for you, and I will actually let you, that's going to be important actually. Let me actually share that with you guys. So hopefully now you can see my browser. If you go to jhevon.org/teaching, this is the page you'll see. A bunch of other pages are here, but of course, this is fall 2020. If you look under there, more classes will be here eventually. I start my first classes for my other classes tomorrow. So you'll see more classes here, but under fall 2020 Forum University, you'll see this here, and you can click on that. And you will see some information that I've already posted about the class. So up already is the syllabus, so this is how you can access the syllabus. Go to jhevon.org/teaching, click on your class, the syllabus that I'm currently going through with you, you can find it right here. Lecture videos are available here. I'll talk about those moving forward. Homework is online. I also sent you the link there. Again, that's not publicly available. I just want you guys to have that. So I sent that in an email. These are some old quizzes just for practice, and these are reviews for tests that you can look up. Documents and handouts that we might be seeing, and a review for the final coming soon. So this page will be more populated as we go along, but this is going to sort of be your hub whenever you're not actually online with me. So I just want you guys to see that. Okay, yeah, all right. Back to OneNote. Okay. All right, so this is a direct link to the class website, but like I said, you can go here and then click on your class and it will bring you here automatically. The text here is Brief Applied Calculus by Stewart and Clegg. The first edition is okay. They probably have another edition, but the first edition is fine. All the information that I have in this syllabus go with the first edition. By the way, when you actually access the syllabus through how I mentioned to you, and let me post a direct link to the class in the chat. Let me do that so you guys can actually have that. Okay, so I just pasted a direct link to the class website in the chat, so you can click that to check it out, and you can see the syllabus. All these things that are in blue that you're seeing here, they are hyperlinked. So in the actual syllabus, you'll be able to click on these and it will take you to the website that is mentioned. And if you click on this link, I believe it'll take you to the Amazon page for the textbook. Now, as far as the textbook, you do not need to buy the textbook. You don't need it. You also do not need to purchase access to homework. Everything is going to be free. Free resources here. So the homework is online, you can access it for free and all that good stuff. And I don't think you, strictly speaking, need the textbook. There are some practice problems that I give you from the text. And if you find that you really need the extra practice, you can access the textbook somehow. Or if you just like having textbooks, I guess that's up to you, but it's not required for you to get the textbook. Okay, but that is the textbook, and if you click on that, it'll send you a link to the textbook if you want to purchase it. In general, the class is a pretty straightforward Calculus 1 class, so for any textbook that you can get, and there are many Calculus textbooks that you can get online, freely available, and almost any Calculus textbook can work with this class. As long as you're reading the right topics and you're paying attention to what I'm doing in class, you should be fine. You don't need the textbook, but if you want it, it's there. Everything is kind of based, how I label the sections are going to be based on this textbook, etc., etc. Okay. Calculators in general, not allowed. Websites, I just told you the purpose of me telling you these websites up here. And just the disclaimer, 2020, after 2020, you have to throw in that disclaimer. Things might go sideways at some point this semester, and I might have to pivot and change things slightly. But if I make any changes to the class or how it's going to be run or any protocols, I will inform you guys of these changes. And I'm not going to make a change that's going to make everything worse for everybody. Chances are it's to make things better. Grading, this is the usual GPA grading chart, and that you can find more information about that here. Here's how your grades are actually going to be computed in this class. So homework is going to be counted for 10% of your grade. That is done online through Blackboard. It's hosted by another platform called Readerly, but it's basically a web work platform. These are guys that are trying to redo web work because web work is an open source online homework platform. It's free, but it's also in some ways out of date. And so these people at Readerly have decided to modernize the web work platform. And so they're hosting it for us. That's where you're going to be doing your homework. You should be able to log in and access that. I did send you a link to that in emails. Quizzes. There will be about 5 quizzes. And I will tell you about when those will occur, and I'll talk about how they will be given. Tests, there will be 2 tests, so there'll be a midterm and there'll be a second test towards the end of the course. And on top of that, there's going to be a final. The tests themselves aren't cumulative unless it's incidental. I'll talk about that. The final is cumulative though. So the tests are individually, they're going to be about an hour and 15-ish minutes long. The final exam will be about 2 hours and 15 minutes long. So yeah, and the final exam is pretty much going to be almost like a combination of test 1 and test 2. But that's the general grade breakdown. Makeups, no makeups or quizzes or homework. I will drop 1 quiz, so you're allowed to miss 1 quiz, I guess. Homework, I'll talk about that, but I'm not dropping any quizzes or homework. So don't be late with the quizzes or homeworks and don't miss any of them as much as possible. If you miss a test, we can talk about makeups, but you have to have a very good reason. Chances are it has to be documented and we will get something in order. So attendance. So this is the usual attendance policy, but it doesn't really apply here. I know people can be in various situations under the circumstances. We will be meeting through Zoom like this pretty much every week. I'll talk about that and you should show up, and I will be checking attendance through your registration data. But for the most part, you're not, normally I give points for attendance, but I'm not going to be giving points for attendance. However, if I notice that you're not showing up, you're not doing homework, you're not doing any of that, then you might, you can fail out of the class for lack of attendance. So please engage, please show up, please be aware of, just, show up and participate as much as possible. Work ethic, pretty much the usual. Don't slack off. And yeah, start working hard. I know that is a part of the thing that makes taking classes online. It's so easy to slack off and lose engagement, and that's what will make things harder. In general, I don't think there's any, well, I shouldn't really say in general. I think for small children it matters, but in general, for adults at the university level, if you are not in a lab where you have to physically be doing stuff, I don't think there's any necessarily inferior quality to learning online versus in person. The only difference is a lack of engagement will hurt you a lot more in an online class than in person. And so whatever energy you would have taken to actually physically go to class and physically do all these things, you now have to redirect that energy into making sure that you're staying engaged. You guys might have noticed, like, I'm dressed, I have shirt on, like I even have cologne on, believe it or not. I'm prepared for class. I get myself in the headspace, I'm going to do work. I put myself in the headspace. I try to get myself in a quiet place as possible to really kind of keep focus. In person, it's easier to do this because you're in a room with a bunch of other people. Everyone's staring in one direction. You're all just there. By association, you're just naturally, even when you're not paying attention in class, you're naturally more engaged in an in-person class, just kind of automatically. That's not true online. You're in your own home. Your chances are you're comfortable. You're probably in your PJs. It's easy to lose engagement, and losing that mental engagement is what's going to make things hard. So try to stay very engaged, work hard. If you ever have any trouble, please reach out to me. Communication is going to be very important. Yes, so that's the usual about work ethic. Give 100%, 110% or more. If you've taken calculus before, this also goes. I know a lot of you have done calculus in high school, but for whatever reason, maybe you didn't take AP exams or maybe you didn't test out of this class. However, taking calculus before does not correlate with doing well in calculus in college, unfortunately, somehow. However you guys do calculus in high school, I do not know what's going on in high school these days, but it does not work. Students who do calculus before in high school do not do better in college classes, in college calculus classes. In fact, I would say they do slightly worse because what happens is when students do calculus before in high school, they have the sense that they've already done this, and so they don't pay as much attention. They don't work as hard because they're like, oh, I already took this class. And it comes back to bite them. And they actually do worse than students who have never taken calculus before, because it's different. Calculus in college is different. The level of responsibility that is expected of you is generally different. What I expect you to be able to do is different. And so it's really going to be a culture shock. So you really want to pay attention. You really want to work hard and all that good stuff. Okay, let's talk about the homework, quizzes, and tests. As I mentioned, homework is online. Now, I will not drop any homeworks or anything of that sort, but you do have a saving grace because it's technologically based. I know things can go wrong. So I actually give you a 15% cushion. So if you have 85% overall on homework, I will bump up your homework grade to 100%. So of course, aim for the 100%, try to get the 100%. But if you miss an assignment or something, or for some technical reason, something doesn't go your way, you're allowed a 15% leeway here. Okay, quizzes. Oh, and by the way, I'm just reading through the syllabus, letting you guys know how things are going to be run. But if you have any questions in the interim, you can stop and interject and ask me a question if you're not sure. I will have time for questions at the end, but let's keep going. Quizzes and tests and the final, those guys are why you need Gradescope. So if you did not receive the email from Gradescope, this is where that is going to come back to bite you. So Gradescope is the online platform which I will be administering quizzes and tests. It's a platform, again, it's free for us this semester, and it gives me a lot of flexibility in how I can assign problems. So we will be using that. So quizzes, tests, they will generally be multiple choice and or select all that apply and or very short answers. For quizzes, that's it. For tests, I will require you to actually write out your full solutions, and you'll scan and upload your work to me where I can assign partial credit, but that will not be required for quizzes. But Gradescope is going to be the platform where we will be doing that. I'll tell you when quizzes and tests will show up specifically, so there's not going to be any surprises in this online class. Everything will be laid out, so please bear with me, and I'll let you guys know that. The final exam, like I said, is cumulative. The dates for all quizzes, and like I said, is later on in this document. We'll talk about that moving forward. Okay, moving down. Yeah, we have a lot of different things. Don't expect things to be homogeneous in the sense that the level of difficulty on the homework versus on the quiz versus on the test, don't expect them to be the same. So I know a lot of students are like, oh, this is nothing like the homework. Well, it's not supposed to be. The homework, when you approach homework, you approach it, it's assumed that you're a newbie, you don't know what's going on, you're kind of learning the ropes. By the time you get to a quiz or a test, I do expect you to have a lot of experience under your belt, so I can test you at a slightly higher level, but it's not going to be unfair. If you go through the homework, you go through the practice as I've been describing, you should be doing well on the tests. In general, students performed on average just about as well as they do in person, which is why I kind of went with the protocol that I'm going with, because it seemed to have worked. So just as long as you make sure to take great pains to stay engaged, don't be shy, to say things, to say things in chat, to say things audibly, to engage with me, to see me in office hours, chances are you're going to do just as well as you would have in an in-person class. In terms of prerequisites, like I said, I pretty much only require algebra. You be good at algebra and pre-calculus. I do have some resources on that, so if you're not good at those classes, I can link you to some resources on that. But that's pretty much all you need to know. You do not have to have taken Calculus 1 before. While I'm not going to explain things as in-depth as I would in a more robust calculus class, I am going to explain things from the ground up. So you can approach lectures knowing nothing about calculus and you should be fine. Blasphemies, we'll actually get back to that. Or do I want to talk about those? So maybe I'll talk about those right now. So in terms of prerequisites, some of the things that I do expect you guys never to make mistakes on are things of this sort. Let me get to those. So there's more I'm going to talk about. So here's the topics that we'll talk about. Here's the schedule. So pretty much when I want you to do each lectures and when the quizzes and tests will show up. We'll get to that pretty soon. But for now, here's a questionnaire I want you guys to fill out. For now, let's talk about these mistakes here. They're very important. They cause a lot of headache, so I want to make sure that you are aware of what I'm talking about. So let's focus on these mistakes right here. Let's wake up the pen here. Okay. This in freeze. Okay, it seems like when I woke up, my pen and tablet, things froze. Okay. Am I frozen? Are you guys still hearing me? Just give me a check-in here. Okay, all right, cool. So it's just the computer. Okay, let me just close this thing and restart. Okay, hopefully you're working now. Right, okay, so looks like we're good. We're good. Okay, so what we're going to focus on now is this section of the syllabus here. Ooh. Okay, cool. All right, so I want to talk about those guys. Some mistakes that you should avoid at all cost. These are mistakes that cause students a lot of trouble. So things to never do. So mistake number one. So here's something that I see a lot more often than I should or I like. Do not cancel across sums. Okay, so here's a very common algebra mistake that causes students a lot of trouble that you should avoid. And it's called canceling across sums. So let's make sure that we all know what this is so you can't say, oh, you know, I didn't know that I couldn't do that. Okay, so, so here's what that looks like. So let's say you're working on a problem and you get to a point where you simplify everything and you get to, oh, 2x plus 1 all over 2. And then you go, oh, I can cancel the 2's. Nope, you cannot cancel the 2's. That is incorrect. Okay, so that is something that you cannot do. So a lot of times I'll see students cancel the 2's and they're like, oh, it's x plus 1. No, it's not x plus 1, right? Now, the reason why you cannot do this is called canceling across a sum. So you cannot do this because there is a plus sign or minus sign. Can't do this. You can't do that. You can't cancel across a sum. That is not allowed. Here's something that is allowed. So there are times when what is allowed is if you got to a point where you see something like this. Now, because there is a multiplication, You are allowed to cancel. So you can cancel here, and this one, this is okay. This is because there's a multiplication sign between terms. So if there's a multiplication between things, you can cancel them. If there's a division between things, you can cancel them. Division, you have to be careful of how you're writing it though. If you're using that division symbol, you have to keep, change, flip, all that good stuff. But you cannot cancel unless you are canceling across multiplications. So that's the first thing. This is called canceling across sum. This mistake is called canceling across sum. It's when you have things separated by pluses or minuses, you cannot cancel them. So that's the first thing. Never do that. Very illegal, and it will cause you a lot of trouble. Second thing, do not distribute powers across sums. What is that? So this is, for example, if you have, say, x plus 3 all squared, a lot of students will do something like take that 2 and they'll square the x and they'll square the 3 and then they'll write this as x squared plus 9. No, not correct. That is not x squared plus 9. Can someone tell me what x plus 3 all squared actually is? Okay, so here's some participation part of the class. Get used to doing that. What is x plus 3 all squared?
It's going to be a quadratic x plus 3 times x plus 3.
Right, and what does that do? Oh, I see some people typing in the comments. Yeah, it's x squared plus 6x plus 9. Now, there are a couple ways you can do that. One is just notice that this is x plus 3, and you can multiply out. Or you can just use the fact, which is preferable. I'd say this is the preferable way to do it. It's to know that a plus b all squared is a squared plus 2ab plus b squared. All right, so there are a bunch of nice little forms like that that tells you how to actually expand binomials. So yeah, you can do that. So you cannot just take the power and attach it to each part. Here's another situation in which this happens. Another common error. This actually is the same with radicals. So sometimes you might have x squared plus 4. And what I would see students do is that they would say, oh, it's just the radical of x squared plus the radical of 4. And so that's x plus 2. It is not x plus 2. Oh. That is wrong. And why? Because the square root here, remember that the square root is actually a power. Radicals are powers. What is the square root? If I wrote that as a power, what would it be?
To the 1/2.
It's to the 1/2. Right. So you cannot do that. You can't attach the 1/2 power to each individual term. In fact, if you were to kind of expand a radical, like how you would expand here, you'll actually need an infinite number of terms, and you're not going to learn how to do that in this class. That's something that you would learn in Calculus 2, although a lot of you don't have to do Calculus 2. So you can't actually do that. But a radical is another situation which students forget. They can't just attach the radical, and it's because there's a plus sign in between terms. You cannot distribute a radical across a sum. You can, it is okay. It is okay if you have a multiplication. So if I have 4x squared or x to the 6 or something, this you can think of as the radical of 4, the radical of x to the 6, and then you can think of as 2x cubed. Technically here you'll need absolute values. I think we'll talk about that later on, but you can do that. or it's equal to if your x is positive or non-negative. Okay, so you can, because there's a multiplication, this is okay. Okay, but you can't distribute a radical across a sum. You can't distribute powers across a sum. Very common mistake. Don't do that. Third thing, less common, but still a lot more common than it should be, do not divide by 0. So if you see 1 over 0, this is meaningless, right? It doesn't mean infinity. It doesn't mean 0. It doesn't mean anything. So if you get something like this, either you made a mistake, or there's no solution. Okay, so if you get a 0 in a denominator, it's bad. It's always going to be bad. It's never really going to make any sense. Now, limits, we're going to cover a topic called limits. Is a context. In this topic. Will come close to dividing by 0, but we'll never actually do it. And so that's going to be something that you should be aware of. So some of the confusion comes there. Like I said, a lot of students who have taken Calculus 1 before will often make this mistake and think that division by 0 makes sense. There are times when you would see things like, oh, x is going to 0 of 1 over x squared. And people think of this as they're plugging in 0, and they would say, oh, that's infinity. But this is actually correct, but it's not because you actually divide by 0. Because there are other scenarios in which that answer does not make sense, like if it's just 1 over x. This answer, we would say, does not exist. It doesn't mean anything. So we'll talk about that when it comes to limits. But actual division by 0, arithmetically dividing by 0, cannot work, does not work, won't ever work. It doesn't mean anything. So either if you correctly get to a division by 0 scenario, it would mean that the problem that you're working on actually does not have a solution. Or maybe you made a mistake and you shouldn't have a 0 in the denominator. It's one of the two. It's not going to ever be the case where, oh yeah, the answer should be 5 divided by 0, and that actually means the answer is 0. No, that's never going to be true. Division by 0 is meaningless. Now, the fourth thing, and limits, this is a topic that we will cover later in this class. So if you don't know what that is, what is the title for the second rule? What do you mean the second rule? You mean up here? I'm not sure what you're asking. So we're going over some important classes of mistakes. One of them is canceling across sums. You don't want to do that. This means you're trying to cancel when there's a plus or minus sign in between terms. Illegal. Do not distribute powers across sums. This means if you can't take a power and attach it to each part of a sum, that's illegal. You can cancel across products. You can also distribute powers across products, but you cannot do it across sums. You cannot divide by 0. There are going to be times in a topic called limits where we'll come very super close to dividing by 0. And there are times when we will get a somewhat meaningful answer. It could be a number, could be infinity, could be positive or negative infinity. There are other times when it won't be meaningful at all, even in that case. But we'll get to those nuances later. However, without this limit sign for sure, there is no scenario in which a 0 in the denominator is going to make sense. In fact, it's going to be a scenario you're going to want to avoid. And there are times when you're going to want to care about the domain of a function. And one of the things you're going to worry about is where the denominator is 0. You're going to know the function does not make sense at those points. The fourth thing I do want to mention is do. This is a do. It's not a do not. Do use parentheses appropriately. In general, use proper notation. Okay, so this is a do. One thing I've also noticed is that there are a lot of times when students will actually be on the right track. They'll actually kind of know what they're doing, but they'll be sloppy in how they write things down. So they'll know there should be a parentheses there, but they don't actually write it. Or they'll just be otherwise very sloppy with their notation. But I see this most commonly with parentheses. And so they'll leave off the parentheses and they'll know in their head that it should be there, but they don't actually take the time to actually physically write it down. And what happens is 5, 6, 7 steps later in a problem, they forget where all their imaginary parentheses are, and they end up computing things incorrectly. So you don't want to end up doing that. So take the time to learn the proper notation. Another issue with notation is when it comes to limits. I often have people writing this symbol in the wrong position and things of that sort. Please pay attention to notation. There are some advice that I'll be giving you throughout the semester. One of those advice is when it comes to learning mathematics, paying attention to the language is going to be very important, both in terms of how words are defined and also in terms of how things are written down, quote unquote, grammatically. And this does apply to notation. The better you are at writing down mathematical notation, the better your understanding will be and the better your performance will be in general. Let's actually go through an example here that some of you might have already done. Chances are you've done this in pre-calculus or algebra. So I just want to go through some example. A typical problem that, again, we will be doing in this class, but a lot of you have seen this before. So let's actually run through this together. Let's see where we're all at. Let's knock the rust off our brains a little bit. Suppose I had something like f of x equals, say 1 minus x squared. And I ask you to find and simplify this expression, f of x plus h minus f of x over h. Okay. Does anyone know what this is called? This expression, if I give you a function and ask you about this expression, do you remember what that's called? No? So this expression here is called the difference quotient. It's a very important expression. In calculus, you're going to see why that expression is important. Chances are, if you did it in algebra or pre-calc, they didn't explain to you where it came from or why it's important. In this class, you're going to learn why it's important. We're going to make calculations with this guy a lot in the beginning, in the first half of the semester, function f of x. So that's called the difference quotient. So find and compute the difference quotient. Okay, so for this function, f of x plus h minus f of x over h. Okay, so, all right, go. Someone tell me what to do here. This is where you guys chime in. So your f of x is this here. That's your function. No, you don't need to define x. X is your independent variable.
Don't we replace the x with x plus h?
Yes, that is the first scenario. So the f of x plus h is going to be, you're going to go to your function, you're going to replace all x's with x plus h in parentheses. So 1, x plus h squared. So that is this part right here. So this part here is that part here. And notice the parentheses. Okay, so everywhere I saw an x, I now put an x plus h and I put it in parentheses. Very common for students to forget those parentheses and they get the problem wrong as a result. So yeah, so that's the first part. How do we continue?
Then you're just going to plug in f of x, like subtract f of x, but I think you should put parentheses around that whole first function.
Yeah, then you're going to subtract f of x. 1 minus x squared. And again, students often forget the parentheses here, but you do need the parentheses. So I can tell you for sure, a problem like this, we are going to be doing them later. And generally, I don't know, I would say maybe 30% of students actually mess these problems up. But I can tell you, of that 30%, like 90% of them get it wrong on the very first step because they leave their parentheses off. They're already wrong before even starting the problem. So you need to make sure that you're putting in the parentheses correctly. Okay, so that would be the first step. So now it says find and simplify. How would we simplify this? What is the next line?
I would expand the x plus h squared and distribute the negative over the 1 minus x squared.
Okay, so 1 minus x minus h. So if you expand x plus h squared, what do you get? X plus h all squared?
2h plus h squared.
X squared plus 2xh plus h squared. And I can distribute this here.
You need parentheses around the x squared plus 2xh plus h squared.
Right. So that's a very common thing to forget. Again, I was going to ask, oh, so are we okay? And if anyone said, yeah, that looks right, this looks right, I was going to, like, I don't know, throw my virtual chalk eraser at you or something. I don't know what I can do at this point. So that's why I miss in-person classes. You need parentheses here. Students often forget that part as well. So even when they get the first line correct, they often make a mistake in the second line. That needs to be distributed because it turns out when you don't have all those signs correct, it ends up making a mistake later down the road when you're actually going to let me move this out of the way. Okay, so we're here so far. Okay, so now you go through and you're like, okay, it's 1 minus x minus h minus x squared minus 2xh minus h squared minus 1 plus x squared. All over h. Oh wait, I can cancel these h's, right? Right here? Yeah?
No.
No. I like it. I like that chiming in. You cannot cancel h. I've seen students cancel the h's at some intermediate point like this. That is illegal. You cannot do that. Okay, so it'll be wrong to cancel h. What can we do?
You can cancel the 1, the x, and the x squared.
Right, and cancel them in the sense that they subtract each other, right? So you have here 1 minus 1, you have minus x plus x, you have minus x squared plus x squared, right? Now, students who miss the parentheses up here, not everything cancels down here that should have been canceled. There is another case of students where they know the parentheses should be here, but they don't actually write it. But by the time they get to this level, they forget where the imaginary parentheses are, and some of their signs here are messed up. So not everything cancels that should. And so that's where the mistakes actually can come in. And I've seen this so many times over the years, it's not even funny. So this now we have minus h minus 2xh minus h squared. Okay, so there's an h in everything. So now I can cancel, right?
No.
No. Okay, all right. So you can cancel. All right, what can we do? How would you continue?
You would distribute the h from the numerator.
Right, well, factor, you mean. So that's called factoring when you pull it out.
Okay.
Distribute is the opposite. Distribute is if you had this and I did that and multiplied out to get what I had before. That's called distributing. But what we just did was factored. Okay, so you can factor a common h out, and now we're allowed to cancel the h's. Maybe I'll put that in a different color because I already started that kind of thing. Now we're allowed to cancel the h's. And so now we have the final answer. Okay. So this is a nice problem, not only because we will be doing calculations like this in the class later on, but it also illustrates a lot of things, like a lot of mistakes that students will make. And actually, generally when students do bad or poorly in a calculus class, it's not because of the calculus itself. It's actually because of the algebra. They mess up with calculations like this. So even when they know the calculus knowledge, to actually execute that knowledge, to actually make the computation and get to an answer and solve a problem, they make mistakes on their way there, right? So this problem, I think, illustrates there are a lot of areas where you could do one of the mistakes that I mentioned earlier, and it actually trips up a lot of students. Hopefully by the time we get to doing this in class, you'll be very good at problems like this. And they can get slightly more complicated, but this is just a nice example to kind of wrap things together like I want. So be aware of your parentheses, don't distribute powers across sums. Another common mistake is for students to be like, okay, is this x squared plus a squared? No, it's not, it's that, right? And so there's a lot of those mistakes that I mentioned can sneak into a problem like this. And I've seen all such mistakes made. I have a comment here. Yeah, that's fine as long as you remember to do that. But there are also potential issues to do with that. It's safer to write the parentheses in first and then make the distribution. But if you're okay not taking this step, that's fine too. All right. So those are some mistakes. Now there are some general other mistakes that are more calculus based, but I guess we'll talk about those later when we get to them. For now, these are the general main algebra mistakes that students make. But of course, in general, I do expect you to be good with algebra in the sense of what do I expect you to know? I expect you to know things like how to solve various equations, so solving quadratic equations and polynomial equations. I expect you to know how to factor various kinds of things. I expect you to know how to sketch various kinds of graphs. Like if I ask you to sketch y equals x squared, you should know what that looks like. If I give you the equation of a line, you should know how to sketch the graph of that line, etc. Just general simplification, knowing things like multiplying and divided by conjugates, when that will be useful, how to find an LCD, when to use an LCD, things of that sort. So just general computational algebraic skills. I do expect you guys to know that. And as far as those guys are concerned, these are the most common mistakes I've seen over my over 10 years of teaching that students make all the time, and they shouldn't. Very simple mistakes. Okay, so that's that section. Whew. Okay, we shouldn't spend too much longer now. I'm gonna like rush through the rest of this so we can get on the way with the rest of the material. Contact. When necessary, I will contact you. Like I said, normally it's through Jupyter Ed or Jupyter Grades or something like that. But any of the platforms that I use, chances are I'm not going to contact you via Blackboard email ever again. But you should definitely look out for contact from me. Usually, if I email you, it's going to be important, some announcement I'm making or whatever. Feedback. Highly encourage feedback. So communication is more important than ever, especially since things are online. We're not meeting in person, and it's going to be easy for you to disengage, and that's not great. So keep the communication line open. So you want to talk about something in class, reach out to me. We can make an appointment during office hours. And if you just have general feedback about how things are, you can just let me know, just as long as you make it constructive. So don't just be like, your teaching sucks. Be like, your teaching sucks because, you know, this will be better. That would be nicer. You know, if you could go over this or spend more time on this, that would be great. Okay. Help. Lots of places to get help throughout this semester. First of all, there's me. If you have any issues, either directly with the material of the class, so with actual calculus questions, definitely reach out to me and let me know, but also just some otherwise general questions. So if anything is going on in your life that it will cause you to not perform well, or you have to miss a quiz, or you have to miss a test, or something is going on, don't just disappear and go AWOL. Reach out to me and say, hey, Jhevon, this is what's going on in my life. I'm going to be missing next week. Blah, blah, blah. Keep me abreast of what's going on so that if there's any intervention that needs to be made, I can make it or direct you to the right people. Very important that you keep the lines of communication open. Every now and then I will have a student who, they just disappear for weeks on end, and maybe they never show up again. There just comes a point in the semester where the student just disappears and doesn't show up. Do not do that. Keep the lines of communication open. Reach out to me whenever you have an issue, because there are consequences to just ghosting the class. You do not want to do that. So yeah, reach out to me for help if you ever need it. The website I gave you earlier, I'll be uploading a lot of information there as well. So keep abreast of that. So you'll see a lot of practice tests, a lot of practice quizzes, other things that could be very helpful to you at that website. Now, during the summer, normally we had tutoring in person on campus, but of course we're not in person on campus. I do know that the tutoring centers had an online component to them that you could meet them through Zoom or some other way. And I would assume that for the fall, that sort of program is being continued. I don't have any specific information on that yet, but when I do, I will let you guys know about that. So chances are you'll be able to get in-person tutoring from someone who is not me, if for whatever reason you will be able to get that. But definitely reach out to me first and foremost if you have issues. And of course, don't just get stuck on something and reach out to me right away. Actually attempt to do whatever it is you need help doing, and let me know what your attempts were. Okay, Jhevon, here's the problem I'm stuck on. I tried doing this. This was my attempt. That would help me help you, just so I can know what you've tried, where your headspace is, what you're thinking about, etc. So yeah. There are a lot of online resources. So there are math forums, Wolfram Alpha and Symbol Lab, awesome websites where you can use to check your answers. So you definitely want to check those out. Graph.tk if you ever need to graph something, desmos.com. A Google search can do you wonders. Lots of online resources. There was a previous instructor at this college who has since moved away, but he had a Twitch channel as of last semester. You can log in there if that's your thing. Ask him questions, let him know I sent you. I don't know if he's still doing it, but as of last semester, he was. Don't forget your classmates. You guys can, I think there is a way to set up a form in Blackboard. I'll probably do that. You can go to the forum, exchange some contact information with your classmates. And yeah, if you ever need to reach out to another classmate to get notes or get another perspective on things, that will be useful. Maybe set up virtual study groups. As long as you guys actually stay on point, that would be nice. So as much as you can collaborate and communicate with other individuals is the better, I would say. Disability services. We do have a disability services office. So you may have be entitled to accommodations such as extra time, maybe a different way of administering tests, etc. You should go to this website, and like I said, if you go to the online version of this, it is clickable. You do need to register to them to be able to get any accommodations that can be afforded to you. So unless you get registered with them, you might not get any accommodations that you're entitled to. Make sure that if you have any idea to suspect that for whatever reason, you are entitled to accommodations to make things as fair as possible, you should reach out to them, and they will get in contact with your doctors or whatever needs to be done. They'll let you know what to do it. So make sure that you do that. I would definitely get in contact with them during the first week of classes. So by next week, going into everything, our first quiz is next week. I'll talk about that. So if you need accommodations for that, you need to register with them before then. They do respond to email, and they can often set up a lot of things through email. So reach out to them. Go to that website. You'll find all their contact information. Yeah, so technically I can't enforce anything here, but it's best if you don't have any distractions. You don't have another screen on when we're having classes or synchronous meetings, or you're doing asynchronous meetings with me. We'll talk about that in a little bit. So yeah, try to stay engaged as much as possible. And whenever we're meeting like this, definitely try to give me feedback, speak to me, put stuff in the chat like you guys have been doing. You guys have actually been doing better than a lot of my other classes, believe it or not. Everyone's so afraid to talk these days. I don't know. They feel like they're going to be canceled or something. I don't know what it is. But don't feel shy. Speak out to me. You need to let me know whenever there's an issue. And no one's going to hurt you for speaking up. You don't understand something, say it, put it in the chat. Chances are if you're confused about something, a lot of other people are confused about it as well. So don't be shy to say, I don't get this, or I had trouble with this. Be careful of that. So stay engaged and don't do anything that is not going to keep you engaged. Academic integrity statement here, don't cheat. So yeah, if I catch you, it's not gonna be great. Okay, so that is that page. Let's see. Next page. So here are the topics that we're going to be covering for the class. If you want to know what we will be doing, it is here. So these are a list of topics that we're going to be covering. These are the sections in the textbook that you'll see here, 1.1, 1.2, 1.3. For the most part, I'm going to skip 1.1, 1.2, and 1.3 because they are talking about stuff that you should have from algebra class, so I don't want to waste time on that. However, you can do some practice problems, and I think there are some problems in your homework about these things, but these are all things that you would have gotten before this class. So the class will officially start with sections 1.5 and 1.6. These are extra practice problems that you can get from the textbook if you decide to buy it or access it electronically some other way. So this is the topic list. This is what we're going to be covering. And in general, we do cover everything here. I don't always get to integration by parts, and so I'll probably just make an executive decision to leave that off here. It's okay if we don't get to it. Calendar of events. This is just a few snippets of events throughout the semester. I just put them here for your reference. You should definitely check out the full academic calendar, which you can find at this link. But there are some important dates here, like when the college is closed, the last day to withdraw from the class, etc. When finals week is. So normally, Fordham would have the final exam schedule up before the start of classes, but with everything that's going on, I guess they didn't get around to it. So I don't know for sure when our final is going to be, but it will be during this time period, somewhere between the December 11th and December 18th. So make sure you don't make travel plans for that entire week. So your final exam, I can't tell you specifically when, at what time that's going to be, but it's going to be during that week. I will update you the moment I know about it. But yeah, calendar events, you can see some there. Let's see, where else are we? Now for the actual schedule and how you will actually be consuming material. So the bulk of your learning will be done asynchronously. And this is going to be the schedule, which, by the way, these guys are all hyperlinked. Okay, so if you go to the syllabus, if you click on this, this will actually take you to the material. So lecture 0 is what we're covering right now. So you don't need to watch lecture 0. But there are video recordings of lectures done by me for all the other lectures here that you guys can actually check out. The dates that I put here are the dates by which you should be consuming these lecture materials. Now, we have a 3-hour class every week. The lecture material here is going to be less than or equal to 3 hours. So some of these lectures go up to 50 minutes. Some of them are as short as half an hour. Some of them go to the 1 hour mark. I think there's like one lecture that goes slightly over an hour long. So yeah, you can watch these in your own time. Just make sure that by this date, you would have consumed this lecture material. So you guys are gonna get to see how the spring went down. These are actually recordings that I made in the spring. And I did a similar protocol in the summer. It worked well. So rather than have you guys sit down on a 3-hour Zoom call, I think I make pre-record the lectures, have you guys consume it, and then you actually meet with me on Zoom and we can go over anything that you didn't understand in addition to office hours. So we'll talk about that. Quizzes, you'll notice that they show up, the locations of quizzes are here. So your first quiz is on the 2nd of September, as you can see here. I mentioned what the quizzes will cover. So quiz 1 is here, quiz 2 is here, quiz 3 is here. Test 1 shows up here. So your first test is October 7th. So you already know that. So in general, quizzes and tests will be at the beginning of the class period. So whenever there's a quiz or a test, that will start at 8:30 a.m. on the date shown. And so I have the location of all tests and quizzes here. Zoom, whenever you see Zoom in this, it refers to a meeting like what we're currently have. So this is synchronous. We will meet in real time on Zoom pretty much every week. So I don't think, is there 1 week where we don't meet? There's probably a week where we don't meet, but I don't think so. Okay, so pretty much every week I'll be checking in with you guys, but it's not gonna be a full lecture sequence. It's going to be pretty much like a general Q&A session where you can talk to me about lectures that you've already watched, and I'll fill in any gaps that you might have missed or you're not sure about. In general, when I have a Zoom meeting on a day where there's a quiz or a test, I will go over the quiz and test with you guys so you guys can see what the correct answers and the correct methods should have been that you should have done. But if we don't have a quiz or a test, then it's going to be like think of it as a mandatory open office hours. You guys come in, you guys tell me what your issues you've been having over the week. You can ask me about the material that I've covered in the virtual class that is pre-recorded, or you can just talk about maybe ask me advice on studying or how to overcome any adversity you're having in regards to this class. We'll have those sessions here. So the Zooms are synchronous. They will happen right after a quiz or a test, or they'll happen at the beginning of class, just as now. I don't assume, today is going to be an exception, but roughly speaking, those sessions will last maybe about an hour or less, I would think, if I go by previous experience. So it's not going to be a full 3-hour session, but you should, by these dates, watch these lectures. So if you actually go here, you'll actually see it is me going through the lecture material with you. And so, yeah, you learn there and you check in with me to make sure you have learned, and you test yourself on quizzes. And I test you on quizzes and tests. Okay, so that's in general about that. So those are all these lectures. So these are like very short chunks. Some of these, like I said, they're 30 minutes long. They go up to 50 minutes usually. On average, these sessions are each like 45 minutes long. So you have within a 3-hour window, just as you would with a general class. The difference is you can actually consume this lecture material throughout the week as you see fit. So you can just decide to watch one lecture Monday, Wednesday, and Friday if you want, or whenever you have the freedom to consume the lecture material when you do. Just make sure that by this date, you have consumed all of these lectures. So by the end of Wednesday, September 16th, you should have consumed all lecture material up to the 11th, lecture number 11, okay? So that's how that's gonna work. Any questions on that before we move on?
I have a
Yes.
quick question. So are you saying that's not included in your lecture like now, or it is, and that's just like another resource to go see it?
Right, it's not included. So you will be
Okay, got
learning
it.
from these, okay? So
Got
what
it.
we're doing now is technically lecture 0, okay? So you don't have to watch lecture 0, but lecture 1 you have to watch. So I will be teaching you new material through these lectures, through pre-recorded lectures. And then I will be checking in through Zoom on a weekly basis to make sure, did you guys all understand what was covered in the pre-recorded lectures? And we'll kind of do like a reverse classroom kind of thing.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Okay. So the lecture material is actually pre-recorded, but I check in with you guys every week to make sure everyone is on par with everything. We're all on the same page. We're all getting everything. And again, in the interim, you can reach out to me during office hours, and we can, if you in the interim you need help, we can do that. But in general, the lecture material is pre-recorded, so you consume the lecture material and then we discuss it after the fact. So you have all the material that I would have done in a lecture in person, plus on top of that, you have an extra session of me commenting on that lecture material and answering your questions about it. And that happens through Zoom like now, like what we're doing now. And these are the locations of all the quizzes and tests. So you know the dates and you know what they cover here. Okay. What is the next page? Yes, I think this is the next one. And these are just some comments on basically what I'm just mentioning here. Class policy, I'm covering that with you now, so you don't have to watch lecture 0. And in general, anything I say in the recorded class about class policy, about when a homework is or when a test is or how I want you to do something, pretty much ignore that. Go by what I said in this session or in the syllabus. And Zoom refers to our synchronous meeting. Synchronous just basically means in real time. So during our regularly scheduled class time, I will be going through a Zoom lecture with you guys. And these guys are all hyperlinked, so if you want to click on that lecture, you can go straight to it. And here are some lectures, other lectures. So this is the lecture playlist. If you want to see all of these lectures in one playlist, that's this here. These are just some extra playlists, but this is the main one that this class is focused on. Okay. And again, these guys are all clickable. And the last thing is I normally give a questionnaire for my students to do in class, just so I can see where most of you are, what the demographics for the class is. Of course, I can't do that here, at least not directly. So what I will do right now is I will actually post in the chat section a link to a Google form where you can fill out that questionnaire. So it's currently in the chat. So there's an equivalent questionnaire electronic form. So please fill that out to let me know just who am I teaching, who am I talking to, what your experience is, what you know, what your apprehensions are, or any of that stuff. Do you know what's your major? Do you know if you should be in the class, etc. So fill that out, make sure that I get that. So that's actually pretty much it. That's the intro for the class. So that's how the class is going to be run. While you guys are finished filling that out electronically, I will right now take any questions that you guys have about anything that I've said today, anything that you're not sure about, any questions, comments, concerns. Let me have them.
I have a quick question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is there a specific type of graphing calculator you recommend for this course?
No, in fact, I do not recommend calculators at all. You would be allowed to use it, but I'm going to write quizzes and tests in such a way that you will not need a calculator to do them. And I would recommend that you not use a calculator.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so you don't need a special calculator. You don't even need to buy the textbook, really. Everything you can do with your own brain and with the resources that I've linked to online. So one of the reasons I think that a lot of students who have done calculus in high school still have a lot of trouble with it in college is an over-reliance on calculators in high school calculus. So I really want you guys to learn to think with just your brain. So you won't need any extra calculators or anything like that. You can, on the actual online homework, you might have questions where, yeah, you need a calculator because they ask you to do something to 6 decimal places or something like that. And so a regular scientific calculator would work. But in general, any material that I give you, it's assumed that you're not using a calculator. Other questions?
I have a question about web work.
Yes.
So I don't know if this happened to anyone else, but I signed up and I have an account, but
Yeah.
I don't have any courses listed. So is there a way to like add your course?
No, if you signed up with the link that I gave you, you're definitely added in there. It's just that I haven't made all the homeworks visible yet.
Oh, okay. All right.
So
Thank you.
I will do that, and I will send an email to you guys to let you know when the homeworks are visible, and you can check with me after that point. So in general, how the homework is going to be set up is I'm going to make all the homework that is due up for material up to test 1. So all the homework that covers everything up to lecture 17, I'm going to make all of those due just before the test. So you'll see all the homeworks for like half the course visible at one point, and then I'll put the next half of all the homeworks and make the due date for that just before test 2. But currently none of the assignments are visible. If you use the link that I sent you, you should be in the right class.
I have a question about the quizzes. So will you send us like an email with the link, or will we go onto your website for that too?
So you should have already received an email from something called Gradescope, and your quizzes
Okay.
and tests will be given through that platform.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. So on the day of the quiz or the test, you'll see a link pop up to a quiz on Gradescope, and you'll do it on that platform. And I think someone typed that same question. Yeah, so quizzes and tests will be given on Gradescope. And whenever I need you to like upload scans of your work or something like that, you'll also upload to the Gradescope site. Yes, the quizzes are timed. So how a quiz day would work is the quiz will be, I don't know, somewhere between 15 minutes and half an hour. So on September 2nd, which I believe is next week, you are going to, at 8:30 a.m., you're going to log into Gradescope. The quiz is going to pop up. You're going to take that quiz. It'll be 15, 20 minutes later. You are then going to log into Zoom, and I'm going to go over the quiz with you. So that's what would happen on a quiz day or a test day. Okay? So they are timed because I want to make sure that we have time to go over in a session. And in-person classes, they're timed, so I don't want to make them non-timed for you guys. So they are timed, yes. Yes, and this was sent in a comment. So yeah, so when it comes to lecture material, and maybe I can show you guys that. Someone asked about lecture material in the chat. So let me share. Where's my browser? Okay, here we go. So if you go to the class website or whatever, and you go on the syllabus, so like I said, all these links are clickable. if you scroll down to this and you click on lecture 1, let's say, see, it immediately links you to YouTube. So here you can see that lecture 1 is 48 minutes long, and it's just me reviewing exponentials and logarithms with you guys. Here's the playlist over here of all the lectures. So it's actually going to be me teaching you guys here, right? So here's where you're gonna learn. I close the window in later semesters to later lectures to stop the glare. But yeah, you're gonna learn here. Okay, so this is where new material is gonna be introduced. You're gonna watch these videos, right? You need to watch them by the date listed in the syllabus. Okay?
I have a question. Will there be lecture handouts and where can we find them?
So in general, oh, let me show you that. So in general, no. So this is going to be like half the class is no, half the class is yes. So these recordings were actually made in the spring, and you guys are seeing the screen again, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So these were made in the spring. So this was actually done in person, so I don't have any lecture handouts for these sessions. But there comes a point, and you'll actually see when it happens, where I actually move the class online and actually teach the class through Zoom, much like I'm talking to you guys now. So that happens at a midway point. When that happens, there's a PDF handout in the lecture description of everything that I wrote down. But in general, I do recommend that you take your own notes anyway. And for the first half of the class, I don't provide those notes to you because that was from an in-person part. So I do recommend that you actually take notes while watching the lecture. It's a way to stay engaged to make sure, and just to make sure that you're paying attention. So you'll have to take your notes for the first half. And by that time, you'll be in the habit of taking notes for the second half. I do provide handouts, though, that I will refer you to in the lectures. And those you can see on the class website down the bottom. So there are times when we go through a lot of word problems, and I'm not going to write those on the board. I gave the class a handout with the problems, and you will have a link to those in the bottom of the class webpage. So yeah, you will watch the lecture material on YouTube by the date shown here. You have to cover these lecture materials. We will go over those lecture materials in Zoom on the dates shown here, and you will have quizzes on material on the dates shown here.
So for next class, you want us to watch videos 1 through 5, you're saying?
Yeah, so
right.
For the rest of, by the end of today, you should get through lectures 1 and 2. And yes, by September 2nd, you should complete up to lecture 5. And at 8:30 a.m. on September 2nd, you will log into Gradescope and you will do quiz 1. Right immediately following that, you're going to log into Zoom, and I'm going to go over quiz 1 with you, as well as any other miscellaneous questions you guys will have. So are we getting it, or am I answering the questions? So quizzes and tests always on Gradescope. You access those at the beginning of class on whatever date they're shown. Immediately following that, we have a Zoom meeting, which is in real time, like we're meeting now. But the actual lecture material, you watch in your own time. So however you have to organize your day, given the fact that you're not physically on campus, you can get around that.
So even though all the homeworks are technically due by test 1, we should complete them within a week of like watching lecture 1 and 2? Or...
Yes, and that is the recommendation. So the deadline for the homeworks, like the deadline for all the homeworks for all these lectures will be just before test 1, right? So that's pretty much these guys here. Test 1 happens around, I think this lecture here on section 3.5. So the homeworks for sections 1.5, 1.6, 2.1, blah, blah, blah. All the homeworks for each of these sections, they will be due, I think the day before October 7th. So on October 6th, you need to have completed all of these homeworks. Now, I make all of them due on that date, but I highly recommend that you do the homeworks as you're going along. Don't wait for October 5th to just go through and do all the homework. It's not going to be as good as the moment you watch me go over lecture for 1.5, do homework 1.5. Even though it might not be due for a few weeks, do it right then and there. You do want to know what you're understanding in real time. That will also give you some things to ask me about. So if there's anything that you don't understand for section 1.5, if you go through the homework, you'll know what you don't understand, and then you'll be able to ask me about that in the next week, in the next Zoom session. So you don't want to wait to do the homework. So technically they're not going to be due until around test 1, but I say do the homework as you're moving along is the highest recommendation.
And that homework is listed on Jupyter?
So no, the homework is on I linked you to the website. It's called Redderly, I believe it's called. Let me actually post the link. So I'm gonna post a link to the homework in the chat. Let's see if I can find it. Okay, so that's the link to sign up for the homework. So yeah, so there are several different locations for things, which is why I decided to read through the syllabus with you, make sure you know where to find everything. But that's the price of me trying to get all the resources to you guys for free. Like if I had like a just one all-encompassing thing, chances are you'll have to pay for it. So I use several different sites. So there's a site for the homework. So Jupyter Grades is for your grades. That's all it is. So that's like your report card. Homework is done on Redderly, and then quizzes and tests are done on Gradescope.
It says there's an error it says an error occurred. Please contact your professor for assistance.
Okay, yeah, so I know a few people are getting that error, and it's being looked into. So just make sure you can log in, you see the verification email, and once you can do that, everything should be fine. I think by the end of day, they'll have that error sorted. But eventually the homework will appear on that, that website. And I'll send out an email to you guys when the bugs have been worked out and the homework is visible. Other questions?
Will we be reviewing practice problems during the Zoom Q&A sessions? Like
yeah, so during Q&A, you can ask me whatever you want. So if there's a problem you want to go over, we'll go over it.
Okay.
So the Zoom that occurs on the day of a test or a quiz has an agenda for more or less. I will actually be going over that same test or quiz on the day. So I'll go over that with you, and then I'll leave a short Q&A session at the end. On days where we don't have a test or quiz, those are pretty much open. So you can ask me whatever you want to ask me about. So if there's something that you watched in a pre-recorded lecture that you didn't really get and you maybe want me to go over it again or explain some parts of it that you didn't get, you can ask me in the Zoom Q&A session. You can also ask me in office hours. Other questions? Okay, so make sure you fill out that questionnaire that I put in the chat. The link to the homework is already in the chat, and a link to the class website is already in the chat. But yeah, so those are the rules of the game. The dates when everything's gonna happen, and mistakes you shouldn't make, and how your grade is actually going to be computed. And I think things will go well. Feel pretty good about it. I've done a few classes with these protocols, but especially for you guys, 3 hours straight of me just going through math with you guys, I don't think it's going to work very well. There are some of my other classes I'm teaching synchronously, but those are like 50-minute sessions, and we can do that. But for you guys, I think watching the lecture in your own time is better, and then you just check in with me to fill in any gaps. So if there are no more questions, I think we will actually wrap up. Again, what I will mention is that you should cover lectures 1 and 2 today at some point, or at least by this weekend. Watch lectures 1 and 2. So I don't believe they're both less than an hour long each. So I believe lecture 1 is around 48 minutes. Lecture 2 is maybe half hour-ish, if I recall. So watch those 2 lectures, make sure you have that done. Because the quiz next week will cover what I talk about in lecture 1 and 2, as well as maybe some algebra problems. Then next week at 8:30 a.m., you will log into Gradescope, you will do the quiz. We then meet on Zoom where I will go over the quiz and go over any other questions. And then by the end of day September 2nd, you should have covered lectures 3, 4, and 5 somehow in your own time. So definitely you want to keep the pace here. You can go further, like you can go ahead if you want. That I don't mind that. So if you want to watch all the way up to lecture 5 today, power to you. Be my guest, you can do that. But make sure that by September 2nd, at the very latest, you covered everything up to lecture 5. Right? You want to keep the pace because there will be quizzes that's going to keep the pace for you. Yeah. So again, maybe what I should do is actually write down some of the things I mentioned here. So next week, I believe that's September 2nd. Is it September 2nd? Like there's a holiday at some point where we skip something. Yeah, so next week, September 2nd. 1, log into Gradescope to do quiz 1. Two, after you're done, I mean, I'll make the window like 5 minutes after or 10 minutes after the quiz, so you guys can get a breather, maybe get some coffee or whatever. But after you're done, you're going to log into Zoom. We'll discuss quiz 1. And any miscellaneous questions. And 3, watch the lectures for that day to lecture. You can go ahead, as I mentioned, but that should be the minimum. By end of day on September 2nd, you should have covered everything up to lecture 5. And as I mentioned, I'll be providing a PDF printout of these things that I wrote here. So you'll have that. I will also post a recording of this video right now, the Zoom meeting that we're having, in a separate playlist that I'll give you guys a link to. We'll call it our Q&A playlist or whatever. So if any other questions, comments, concerns before we wrap up, because that's pretty much all I wanted to do today, just kind of let you guys know the rules of the game, how things are going to work. So are we good? And again, you have my email. If you have any questions about anything, shoot me an email. If you need to meet up for office hours, shoot me an email. And yeah, stay in communication. So are we good? Everyone okay? All right, awesome. Let's have a good semester. Okay, so that's it for today, guys. Thank you for showing up. Most people showed up. I think there are about 3 people missing. We'll figure out what happened to them. But that's where we're ending. So consume lectures 1 and 2. That's what your quiz is going to be based on, as well as some algebra stuff. And I will see you guys next week. So it's next week starts with a quiz on Gradescope. After the quiz, I will see you guys here, wherever you are. And we'll stop there.
Since
Yes.
Letterly's not working right now, can you just send us the homework for lectures 1 and 2?
Oh, yeah, I will send you when everything is set up. When the homework is set up and actually visible, I'll let you guys know. Okay? All right, so I think that's it for today. Normally our sessions will be a little bit shorter than this, but I just want to make sure that we're all kind of know what's going on. Let's actually stop there. So without further, I think we covered everything. Again, if you have any more questions or concerns, reach out to me through email. I'll respond. We'll figure everything out. Thank you for joining, and I will, I guess, see you guys in the next one. Ciao.